I am in London, England, and this is All-Hallows-by-the-Tower, a very historic church right by the Tower of London. This church was founded in 675 AD, and they claim that it is the oldest church in London, not the structure but the organization. That means it was founded 300 years before the Tower of London was established by William the Conqueror. This was the site of an abbey during that time. Then the church was built and rebuilt multiple times between the 11th and 15th centuries, so it's kind of hard to put a date on it. The church's tower and steeple was rebuilt in 1658 after an explosion, and that was just 8 years before the Great Fire of London essentially destroyed the city. This church was saved from the fire because nearby buildings were blown up before the blaze could reach them, and that was done under the order of church attendee Admiral William Penn, the father of Pennsylvania's William Penn. Unfortunately, this church was devastated during the Blitz. Basically, all that survived from the 15th century was the tower and outer walls. The church was reconstructed throughout the 1950s, and that included almost all of the interior. Since this church was so close to the Tower of London, many of the people who were executed there were originally buried at this church, such as Sir Thomas More and the Archbishop William Laud, but they are now buried elsewhere. There's the organ. There are lots of model ships in this church. Apparently lots of sailors attended this church, and eventually they got a lot of miniature boats donated. This is the Mariners' Chapel, which is currently not honoring mariners, but instead Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II for the Platinum Jubilee. There's a picture of her, and there are candles to say a prayer of thanksgiving for the Queen. This is the Forster Memorial, a memorial to World War I veterans with this effigy of Lieutenant Alfred Henry Forster of the 2nd Dragoons who died from his war wounds in 1919. This is the tomb of Reverend Philip Tubby Clayton, who was the church's vicar from 1922 until 1962. He founded the international Christian organization Talk H, or Talbot House. This church has a lot of ties to United States history, as a couple of famous Americans have connections here. William Penn was baptized here in 1644, a few decades before he sailed to America and founded the colony of Pennsylvania. Later on, future President John Quincy Adams was serving as ambassador to the court of St. James, and during that time he met London-born Louisa Catherine Johnson. On July 26, 1797, they married in this very church. It is the only instance where a US president was married in a foreign country. I found this pew cushion honoring John Quincy Adams, that's neat. This is a miniature model of the TSMV Royal Daffodil, which was built in 1939. This is the baptistry. As mentioned, William Penn was baptized here, but this is not the same font. That one was actually moved to Christ Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is the Adoration of the Magi, a 1690 painting out of the school of Peter Paul Rubens. This painting was damaged by the bombings. There is a free little museum under the church in the crypt, so I'm gonna head down there. That is a surviving Saxon arch, and this is some authentic ancient Roman pavement. It's about 2,000 years old. This was discovered while they were cleaning up from the bombings. London was established by the ancient Romans in 47 AD, and where this church stands now was the site of Londinium, so they have some Roman relics like these gravestones. All of these date back to the latter half of the 1st century. Here's a model of Roman Londinium as it appeared in the year 400. There was a bathhouse near where this church stands now. And there's the Forum and Basilica. These are some 18th century documents. One lists donors who funded church furnishings. These are some old church pieces, many from the 1600s. This is the Ypres cross. This cross was found in the rubble of the cathedral at Ypres, Belgium, after it was destroyed by the Germans during that World War I battle. That's a portrait of a young John Quincy Adams, and below it is the church's marriage register, used from 1764 to 1809. It is open to the page that documents Ambassador John Quincy Adams marrying Louisa Catherine Johnson at this church on July 26, 1797. Louisa did later become the First Lady of the United States. She was British, so she wasn't terribly popular, and she was the first one not born in the United States until Melania Trump about 200 years later. This is the church's baptismal record for the years 1643 and 1644. It shows that a young William Penn was baptized at All-Hallows on October 23, 1644. Of course, he would later go on to establish Pennsylvania in America. This is the 1645 burial register, which at the very top documents the death and burial of Archbishop Laud, who was the Archbishop of Canterbury, but he was beheaded at the Tower for implementing religious reforms under Charles I that persecuted Puritans. Here's a display on Tubby Clayton, who founded the Talbot House. This is a model of the upper room in the original Talbot House, where Tubby Clayton had his church in Belgium for the soldiers to worship in. This is a cherub head from the late 1600s Hickson Memorial, which was damaged in World War II. I really like this cherub holding a skull. This is an image of the Barking Abbey that stood here 1,000 years ago. These pieces of Saxon stonework were discovered down here in the crypt of the church. This is a Saxon wheelhead cross that was found under the church's nave during rebuilding. This is an old William Penn memorial plaque that commemorated his baptism here. It got damaged by the World War II bombings. Here's an old door that got bomb damaged. This is a cool illustration of 18th century London. St. Paul's Cathedral and even this church can be seen. Down here is the cistern, where the church vicars all hid the parish registers and minutes from the authorities. Here's the columbarium, which was added in the 1930s, so people are interred in here. This is the de Beauvoir Memorial, which used to hang on a wall upstairs, but it was dislodged by the bombings. Here's a memorial to some men of the Royal Navy during the Great War. And this is the church's World War II memorial. Here's the chapel of St. Francis of Assisi, inside a crypt dating to 1280. And this is the St. Clair Chapel, which was a 17th century burial vault. It is believed that John Kettlewell, who was executed after refusing to swear the oath of allegiance to William and Mary, was originally buried in here. Sir Ernest Shackleton's crow's nest from his final ship, the Quest, is usually in the museum. I really wanted to see that, but I found out it's on loan to Ireland and South Georgia right now, so that's a bummer. Right next to the church is the Tower Vaults, a little underground shopping center between the church and tower. There's bobbleheads of shirtless Trump, the Queen, and a Queen's Guard. There was a KFC in here. And this was the site of a tea warehouse. Wow, that is a fascinating and very storied church. It's free to visit and just steps away from the Tower of London, so make sure to stop in. If you enjoyed this video, then please make sure to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. Also check out my other London videos, including some on the Tower of London, along with my videos on all sorts of other historic sites, churches, museums, presidential sites, and more in Europe and in the good old US of A. Thanks for watching.